Yep, I'll start it right now.
Thank you. Good morning, team, and welcome to the Top Chem Pay Committee meeting. As you know, Sam Verde has asked me to lead this committee. Mr. Gilbert, Although I've worked hard on the initial pay plan, I realize that no plan will be successful without support from the employees. I want to get your input so that we can create a pay plan that is best for everyone. Gus, are you there this morning?
Yes, I am.
Gus, would you mind doing me a favor? We're going to start brainstorming here in a minute. We're going to come up with at least 20 ideas. Would you write those down for us so as a group we can review them?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. I just want to make sure that everyone's here this morning. Sid, are you here this morning?
Sid is here.
Thank you, Sid. Ruth, were you able to attend this morning?
Yes.
Thank you. Miles?
Here.
And we've already talked to Gus. What about you, Bill?
I'm here.
Thank you, Bill. And Sydney, are you here this morning as well?
Yes, Sydney is here and present and counted for.
Great, great. Thank you so much. So like I said, we want to start talking and brainstorming some ideas, at least 20 of them, for our pay plan. So I want to just kind of start getting your ideas. Sid, do you have any ideas on this morning?
I don't have ideas to give you, but I can tell you what I've looked at I don't like.
Okay, go ahead. I'd love to hear your opinion.
Look, I've got a team of experts. They're smart people, they're scientists. They've put in time and efforts to become educated, to know the chemical industry, to know what they're doing. A lot of what you're saying on this and the weight of having to rely on teams is a waste of their time. We're a chemical company. We're not a professional athletics team. They need to be doing their scientific things or we aren't going to have a product.
So Sid, are you trying to tell me that guaranteed pay is best for all employees?
You know, when I talk to my team, that's what it looks like. You know, they've put in the effort to get the education and they expect to come into a job with a pay at a specific spot. And they know what their job is and they're doing their job well, and relying on somebody else that doesn't know what they're doing is just, you know, a craw in their back.
That's interesting. Well, we'll have to take that under advisement. Ruth, what do you think about what Sid just said?
Well, I think that there is some really important elements to a corporation besides just the scientists. You know, we have a scientist on our team, and he really likes working with everyone on it. I know I've worked really hard working weekends and doing those sorts of things to get our numbers the way that they need to be, and our team has been super successful. We've gone from 3 months to 3 weeks on some of these lead times, and so I think it's kind of you're not looking at the big picture if you're only looking at the science portion of it. You know, we have to get products out. If there aren't any products coming out, then there's no company.
So Ruth, could you say that you and your team are for a guaranteed pay, or do you like the incentive pay that's linked to your performance?
If it's linked specifically just to my performance and some of the things I do, I would appreciate that. I spend a lot of time, I do weekends and those sorts of things, and I know other people don't do that, but I don't want anything that is out of my control, right? I don't want my pay to be based off of other people's, how they run their team. You know, I want my team to be rewarded for what we're doing, but I don't want to be dragged down by things that I don't have control over. Like if a supplier isn't able to give us our parts or anything, I don't want to be held accountable for that because that's not my fault.
Okay. Miles, can I get your input on what has been said so far this morning?
Well, I disagree with Ruth there because, I mean, our whole company is a team, and we all work together, and when things aren't going well and as a whole, then we all pay a price a little bit. We're actually only talking 4% of the pay that's going to be reflected on company performance. You know, it's really not that much weight being carried on that. You know, the managers, they're like 60% of their salaries are affected on the company performance. So, you know, I think as employees, we have to work as an entire team, and then if we're doing, you know, individual teams getting paid, then, you know, there's going to be jealousy and hurt feelings, and, you know, my team's working harder, so what, you know, that kind of thing. I think it just causes problems.
Okay, and Gus, can I get your opinion on what's been said in the plan as it stands right now?
I actually think that there should be a higher percentage placed on overall company performance, more than 4%.
Okay, I get where you're coming from. Bill, we haven't heard from you yet this morning. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think I'm okay with the plan as it sits right now. Some issues that I kind of see are I don't have the time or the desire to tell people that aren't in my department how to do their job. And I think we have too much bureaucracy across the board in this company anyways. And so I think the issue is that there's going to be too many people that either can't or won't get on board. And so it's going to, you know, we're going to drop a lot of people. I think that's okay. Probably as many as 15%, as much as 15% across the board. And so, yeah, I'm okay with the way it sits, but I just think that we need to be ready for a cut in our labor.
Okay. So if I understand you correct there, Bill, you're okay with the turnover rate of 15% and not retaining our current employees?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have too many employees, too much training, and too much time and resources go into that.
Okay. Sydney, I'd like to get your opinion on this.
They can be going anywhere. They could work for a pharmaceutical company. They could be anywhere they want to be, and the only reason why they come to us is because they know that they're going to be paid fair market share, and they also believe in the products that we make. So we have to be able to have both hand in hand, and if they're not being paid commensurate with what the rest of the market is being made, they're not gonna come here. So I think we should not take that 75% of what our normal base pay is and have the rest of it be based on reaching numbers that they're always going to be looking for the next best to do that, because that's what they do. That's what gives them energy and drive, is to continually look for some way of doing things. That's the way my guys are. So I don't like that we're not paying them that.
Okay. So if I'm getting that correct, Sydney, sorry, you're breaking up a little bit. You believe that it's worthwhile to keep that base pay so that we can keep the employees that we have and we become more marketable based on our labor costs. So now that we've all kind of discussed our problems and pros and cons to the plan, let's go ahead and brainstorm what we could do better. So I'm going to pose this question out to you, and I want you guys to just jump in and give me your honest feedback. So which is better, guaranteed pay that is same for all employees based on market rates and or seniority, or incentive pay that is linked to performance? Would anyone like to jump in and give me your opinion on this and how we could do it better?
I have a thought.
All right, this is Sydney, and I think
Sydney, I'm sorry, come again, you're cutting out there a little bit.
all right, let Sharon go, and then I'll try again in a minute. Hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. One question I have is, why are they even changing the pay when the way they've reorganized and restructured and built teams is working for them? I don't even know that they should be messing with pay.
Anyone would like to answer that question?
Well, I want them to mess with pay a little bit. I mean, I've been working really hard, and I've really done what the company has asked as far as like really working on my team and really doing the goals. And I feel like I should get paid for that. You know, there are people who aren't working on the weekends, and I feel like if I'm missing my kids' soccer games and I'm missing, you know, times to go on hikes or whatever, that there should be some sort of reward in it for me other than, hey, good job, look how good Ruth is and her team.
I can see that. That's a fair point for sure. I think So how would you like, is it Ruth again? I'm sorry, I can't see this morning. Was it Ruth who wants to make sure that we're linked to performance?
Yes, I mean to a degree.
So Ruth, how would you change this plan as it currently sits?
I think that it should be based off of our lead times or speed to market,
Okay.
and unit cost to market. I think that those are some of the things that we can control, and if you're working really hard as a team, you can do better and you can be more innovative, and you should get rewarded for that.
Okay. And how much? Go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay. Hey, as Sid, I'd like to say my team, they work really hard at what they do, and they are talented and they are skilled. And when we have to drag other teams along, it really is a waste of their time. So if you can make some kind of compromise or differentiate what kind of expectations there are for the teams and what their expectations will be, then I might be more likely to consider something. But straight across the board, me relying on my team relying on people that are in completely different areas of the company, I just don't see that that's going to work. It's got to be more individualized to the job and what they expect to do.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding you correct, Sid. When I go to Sam with this plan, your proposal is that we do it based on groups versus a whole overall company. You want me to tell them, hey, you know what, here's this team working in my Palmer department, and these are the hits that they want to hit this season, and if they hit those, then this is the incentive they want, but they don't want to be lagged down by our group in our research and development team. Is that correct, Sid?
Well, that's correct to a point, except we are the research and development team. We don't want to be lagged down to the sales guys. We have our goals, and we have the things that we're looking at. We're looking ahead in the market at what's coming, and we're working on those things, and we're prepared ahead of the market. And if your sales team isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, that's not our fault, and we shouldn't be punished for it.
Understood. Okay, we'll write that down. Miles, do you have anything to add this morning?
Well, I think that every team kind of working for themselves it creates disharmony and segregation in the company, and then the company is no longer a team performing for its whole. So I disagree with the individual team incentives.
You don't think there could be a competitive nature by these individual team incentives that would increase the whole?
I actually think it would bring down morale.
Okay.
Because, yeah.
So how would you propose that we do it? An overall incentive base?
Yes, and overall, how well the company's doing is how well the employees get paid, and that will encourage going across teams and working with other teams that may need help in creating better productivity, helping them with ideas.
Sydney, what are your thoughts on that?
I hear what you're saying, but my team, they're going to be leaving. They expect to be paid a certain amount because they are doing their job, and we're going to lose the talent, and we're going to lose productivity in the future because this talent is going to go elsewhere.
So, Sid, you're saying that your employees will jump ship because they will find something better in a different company.
I believe so, and I think that would be a detriment to the chemical company as a whole.
And this is Sydney. I want to add to that and say, I think we should just get the whole matter of pay off the table. Pay everybody enough that they know that it's the right and good and fair price. And if you want to do your happy little incentives, make that go ahead and be company-wide. If the company does well, everybody does well as a bonus.
Well, I know for me, this is Ruth, I'm not going to work on the weekends then if there's no incentive for me. Like, not everyone's working on the weekends, so why should I do that? Why shouldn't I be spending all this time if it's not going to really matter, except I'll get like a 0.2% raise because I worked really hard and some other groups didn't.
Well, Ruth, this is Sydney, and I want to know why you are doing this all by yourself and not working with the other supervisors of the other production teams. You're pulling more weight than your own, but you're doing it all by yourself. And it sounds to me like you guys need to be working more together as a team among your peers and be able to pull it and allow them to help increase everybody's productivity.
Well, our team does work well, and we bought into what the company asked us to do, and I can't help it if other people decided that it was dumb and they're not willing to do what the company asked them to do. So I've just perfected what I can.
If I'm getting this conversation correct, though, we're all okay with incentive pay, but it's how we apply the incentive pay that we're having issues with. So I want to go back and ask this quick question. Since we've kind of come to a consensus that incentive pay system is going to be okay, so I want to know how much pay should be based on your performance.
I'll pipe up. I think that the 25% is okay. It's been said that, you know, maybe some people will leave if their base pay is cut to 75%, and how that's viewed as a negative thing, but I think that's a positive thing. I think we have too many people sucking up too many resources, and if we keep it at a 75% base pay with a 25% incentive pay on top of that, it's going to weed out the riffraff, the people who don't want to work hard. They're going to leave the company, and I think that's okay. That's cutting waste. And then the people that do want to work hard, they're going to get paid a little bit extra. And so I think it's distributing the wealth of the company where it should go, to those who are driven to perform well.
And team, how do we feel about it? 25% of your salary is performance-based.
Well, I take offense at being of my scientific team and research and development being called riffraff. These are elite people, and calling them that is really insulting to them and to me as their manager. And you know, if someone can't hold their own in R&D, then that's my responsibility to let them go and get the best people. And I've worked really hard, really planned well, and we have this group that is top notch.
Yeah, especially this is Sydney. If you start looking at, hey, we're only going to give you incentive pay for each new product you come out, well, yeah, we'll make products for you, but they're not going to be any good. I don't think that's what you really want, is it?
Miles, we haven't heard from you yet lately. Do you have any opinions on what has been said?
I really have to speak as Miles, huh?
Sorry.
I just think that, first of all, I would rather not see anything happen with the pay, but if it's going to happen with the pay, I think it needs to be distributed throughout the company, just because the company is a unit. The company is a whole team as a whole. We're not a whole bunch of different groups working separately. We are a team.
And that's how you'd like the incentive pay to be based. It is based on the whole company's performance.
Company. Yep.
And Ruth, I've heard that you don't want it that way. You'd rather have it just team-based versus company-based. Do you see any way that we could do a combination of both, or do you just purely see that it's important that it's based on your team performance?
I think we can do it to a degree, a company-based, but I don't want that to be the major source. Because once again, like, I've spent a lot of time working and I've been doing things, and I you know, when I heard that there was going to be different pay, I want to see rewards for my effort. You know, you guys have come down and you have said, do this, and I did, and so you know, a little bit of company is fine, but I want it to be more based off of our teams and how we're working.
So let's go with the idea that we're going to do a 25% performance-based, is what your salary is. So based on that, how would you break down how much is individual performance, team performance, or company performance within that 25%?
5%, I think, should be company-based performance. I would say 15% should be based off of individual, and 5% should be based off of group.
Do you think with that group being at the 5%, and anyone can jump in, would diminish the culture of the different departments? Or do you think that 5% would be that incentive to get your employees to work together better?
I think it probably actually needs to be higher now that you mentioned that. I'd probably redistribute it a little bit, maybe 8% as a group.
I just know that we're trying here at Top Chem to create a culture of teamwork, and I was just wondering if we could reflect that a little bit more. Did anyone have any other comments or how they might want to see that 25% performance-based salary distributed? Sydney, do we have you back yet? Gus, what about you?
You talking to me?
Gus, yes.
Just a quick question. Do we have to try to come up with our solution as our role-playing people, or can we just come up with our list as our regular team that works well together?
I know, I'm sorry. It actually does say we need to do this as our group. As our,
until
not
the
as
end.
our group, but as the people.
Because I would want to contradict myself.
I'm sure.
All right, well, like I said before, I want to go ahead and just have a regular all-around pay on the pay scale for each person according to the kind of job that they do. And then give the company a bonus company-wide if things go well. And, you know, individuals can be promoted if they're performing well. That can be their own incentive and not have it be some kind of percentage.
I like that idea.
Okay,
See,
I
I
agree.
disagree.
You disagree? I agree
I
with
would say-
Miles.
Oh, go ahead.
Gus, go ahead.
Okay, I agree with Miles about trying pay to the performance of the company, but for different reasons. The benefit of tying a large group's performance to the pay of its member is that it encourages everybody to excel, and it ensures excellence through conflict. You see, productive teams have members who tell each other what works better. The same should hold true for teams. Good teams need to raise the level of teams that haven't caught on.
Bill, did you have something you wanted to add there too?
Yeah, I like the idea of tying a larger percentage of that 25%, maybe 15%, to the company-wide, how the company is doing, because that's what determines success, is how much is the company making, you know, whether or not all the departments are firing on cylinders together. The real metric for measurement is, you know, how is the company doing? And so I think that a larger percent should be based on how the company as a whole is doing, and that, you know, if your department is doing well and everybody is as good as you think they are, then it won't be an issue at all. That you won't lose anybody because everyone's working hard. But I think what we'll see is that there are some members of certain departments that aren't working as hard, and those are the ones that are going to go by the wayside.
Well, why can't, like, a member of Ruth's team invite one of their team members out for a drink or something after work and go discuss it?
Ruth, would you like to respond to that?
Well, we're busy working and doing a lot of things, and I don't really know how to do that. You know, if they really wanted to be involved, then they could come ask me at work. But I mean, I'm already working weekends and doing all these other things. I don't want to go out with coworkers and go get a beer. I want to be home with my family when I'm not working on my job.
Well, you won't have people working together unless there's an incentive for them to do so. I see that built in this plan. In fact, I would make sure more pay dependent on how well teams teach each other teams useful skills.
But do we run the risk then of some teams not even trying until someone comes and teaches them? Like, what about innovation and trying hard? You know what I mean? Like, I just don't want to spend all my time training people when they just have decided not to see the vision and catch on.
Yeah, and I don't think it's fair to base pay on how well you're telling other people to do their jobs. We don't have the time or the resources for a manager of one department to go to a manager of another department and tell them how they should be doing their job. And I think that the motivation will come by people wanting to either get their 15% or not. You know, it's going to depend on how well they're motivated by their incentive pay.
Well, I don't think it would be too hard to ask everybody to go out to lunch together and actually talk with each other and tell each other what they're doing that's making things successful. I think you should just post everybody's metrics on the board, let everybody else see who the real production guys are, and so everybody goes to them on their own initiative.
I'm fine with that. If the company is going to pay for lunch, I'm down.
I'll put that in our remarks.
I just see that as a lot of resources are going towards something that should be taken care of at the level of that group. You know, like it's been said, who's going to pay for that lunch, but also who's going to pay for that time off for each employee that goes to that lunch. Who decides who's going to be at that meeting, and who decides what needs to be said to each individual.
Sid, what did you think of our incentive pay system that we've kind of talked about this afternoon?
Well, like I said before, I really don't like any of it, but
let's just say I'm going to make you choose. If your incentive pay, would you like it based on individual performance, team performance, company performance, or a combination?
it needs to be a combination. I want my guys paid what they need to be paid, and what happens in marketing or sales, that's their own deal.
So do you feel like incentive pay will increase employee motivation, or do you think it'll distract and decrease from your team?
I think it's going to decrease my team. I think there's going to be a lot of guys that bail. I think we're going to lose a lot of good talent. But you know, if I'm able to be responsible for distributing out who's doing well, if I'm able to control that 25% according to my own department, then I might be more willing to consider it.
Okay. Miles, did you have anything you wanted to add to this?
I think that 25% out of the base pay is too much. So I would agree with the 15% of based on company performance.
And all company performance, not any individual or team performance on that.
Right.
So you feel like there's other ways to motivate your employees for this team unity that we're looking for here?
Yeah, if you build the culture, you know, of the company, they're going to want to do their job well for the company.
So you don't think the incentive pay will increase their motivation?
No.
So do you
Studies
feel like
have shown that it doesn't.
Go ahead, sorry.
I think studies have shown that it doesn't. It just teaches people to not work unless there's incentive.
That's exactly what I was thinking, because if I'm the manager in charge of my department and I know I've got this incentive program that I'm going to do, I'm going to work the numbers. We're all mathematicians and scientists over here. We can make the numbers say whatever we want.
So, Sid, are you trying to tell me there might be other reasons to use incentive pay, not just for motivation reasons?
Other reasons? What are you thinking other reasons?
Not tied to, we don't want to motivate them, we just want to just show them that we're willing to give them an extra X, Y, or Z just to be here. You feel like that's more appropriate than to be like, hey, if you work hard, we'll pay you more?
I don't really understand your question, but like I said before, I think it needs to be based on, you know, an individual team, and then that team determines if the individual is pulling their weight, and then it's taken care of at the team level. But my team's not going to want to be responsible or lose their pay depending on what somebody else is doing in another team across the courtyard there in another office, where they're working hard to develop products for the whole company, and then to be taxed because somebody isn't pulling their weight. I don't think they're going to go for it.
So before we move on, I just want to make sure I'm understanding everyone in the team correctly. We cannot come up with a precise plan of how we want to improve our pay plan as a group. We all have disagreements on how incentive pay should work. Was there anything else anyone wanted to add?
I think we can do the incentive pay. This is Sydney. But not the 25%. I think our whole pay should be there at 100%, and incentives can be based on the full productivity of the company. If the company makes a 30% profit that year, then give everybody company-wide 3% of it.
Yeah, do more of a profit sharing.
Would everyone feel more comfortable with the profit sharing versus a incentive pay system?
No, I like the incentive pay system. I think it'll help us retain skillful employment and get rid of those that maybe aren't as motivated.
Okay. So I'm just getting the feeling that we have not come to an agreement of how we want to press forward. I feel like I need to report to Sam on the areas that we've discussed and disagree, and then I'll ask him how he wants the committee to proceed. Anyone else wants to comment before we move on?
I think it would be important to ask the line employees how they feel about it. I mean, we may feel completely different as managers.
Perfect. I will put that in my notes, and I'll report back to him. Okay, group, that was that. I've now been told to tell everyone to relax out of their top chem roles and return to their own identities.
Yay.
Thank goodness.
So we're just going to spend a couple more minutes here discussing how each of us truly feels about the plan. We're going to go ahead and just start with the first question I asked, and it was kind of, hopefully everyone was able to follow. So as a individual, not as a top chem employee, what do you feel, guys, that is better? A guaranteed pay for all the employees based on market rates, or an incentive pay linked to performances?
Guarantee pay.
Guaranteed pay?
Yeah.
Guaranteed pay. I mean, Good to Great said, get that matter of money off the table. You know, you pay them enough that they come to work for you in the first place, but that's not what keeps them there. It's the
No.
environment, it's the culture,
Exactly.
it's everything else,
Exactly.
it's the challenging of the work.
I mean, it says right in the beginning that their new structure is working well for them. Why mess with it?
Yep.
It's true.
Yeah, you've got to have good people to start with, and if you're not paying them what they're worth, they're not going to come. And you know, bonuses for incentive, I can see that, but that base pay is important.
Yeah, I agree. I think the base pay needs to be at 100%. You know, you pay employees what they're worth. But I like the idea of incentive pay as a bonus on top of that. I've worked at companies where that's been the case, where you get paid your salary regardless, but then if you hit certain goals along the way that you personally set with your manager and you two track it together, then you get a bonus on top of your base pay.
Not that I ever played professional sports, but isn't that how the professional sports world works? Is they get a base pay, and then if they get to the Super Bowl or if they do this, then they get that extra money if they do those different things. I think that seems to work in the workforce, is to have that. Hey, do you know what? We value what you've done in your life to get your career to where you're at. We're going to give you that, but if you do above and beyond, we're going to acknowledge that as well. Because like Ruth in the reading was talking, she was working Saturdays. It's hard when you're a salary employee to not be recognized for all that overtime because you're not getting paid for it and you're not being recognized. It really burns you out.
Unless
Yes,
you could
there's
rationalize that you're still getting more because of that salary than you would have if you were back to your hourly wage. I mean, there is that point where you can rationalize it one way or the other. At one point it's worth it, and at the other point it's not.
Yeah. I remember when my husband was working at the plant level, there'd be a lot of times that his plant people would be being paid more per hour because of overtime than he got salary based because of just how many hours everyone was having to put in. So I can see that incentive to be like, hey, we recognize the performance that you're doing, and because we recognize it, here's X, Y, or Z. So of that incentive, how much of it should be based on the company's performance versus the individual's performance?
Well, I think since their their new structure is teams, I do think it should be bonus, not base pay, but bonus should be team based.
Yeah, I can see it being distributed out into the different departments, but then letting the department managers distribute that out, because they're going to know, like the role that Erin was playing, if she's in the office on Saturdays and somebody else on their team is not, then when they distribute out that bonus, then they can give more to the one who's staying on Saturday than they do on the one who checks out exactly at 5 o'clock.
And Jen, have you seen that with your husband's job? Have you seen that occur that way?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing way to do it. Is you get your base set or your base pay, you go in for your bonus incentive, and you're allowed X percent, and then based on your performance, then the company says, hey, yeah, you're only eligible for 20% of your bonus, but we've noticed that you've worked hard, so therefore you're eligible for X, Y, or Z of your bonus. It's higher.
Yeah, exactly. And I think at the manager level or the supervisor level, they're more aware of the people who are putting in the extra work, and they know who's being a slacker, and who arrives right at 8:01 and checks out at 4:59.
Mm-hmm.
They're paying attention. They know.
So as a whole, do you think incentive pay increases employee motivation or not?
I think
No.
it just rewards those who are willing to do the work.
Yep.
It has to be the frosting on the cake, not the main meal. We in B211, we just finished watching the videos. I don't know if who's taken it and might remember, where they show that they increase the incentive, and in fact, the higher the reward, the poorer people did in order, in trying to achieve it. It's weird and it doesn't make sense, but studies on behavior show that that's what happened. The people who had less incentive worked hard, whereas the people who had a slightly medium incentive, they pretty much did the same thing as the people who had a lower incentive, and the people that had the highest one did worse than them all. And it doesn't make sense, but that's the way behaviorists have been able to make the correlation in studies and statistics. So you have to sometimes throw away what you think is right and show and look at what's proven to be right.
I agree. Sharon, did you have anything you wanted to add about what we've talked about so far?
I have an example of how individual incentive within a team, it's actually a team incentive, really demotivated my husband and their team. He was working for a foreign exchange placement company, and they based their bonus on a goal that was unrealistic. And so it was realistic in some of the regions, but since all the regional managers worked in different areas with different setups in terms of how many students they could hold, how many schools would take their students, there were just some people that right away said, well, that may work in that area, but in my area there's no way I could ever achieve that, so why try? And it totally just demoralized the unit, because they all knew that the goal was unrealistic in all areas, and they all knew that none of them were going to get a bonus.
Yeah, I can see how that would happen for sure.
But I think that my point is that the way you structure the bonus is really, really important.
So do you think that structure needs to be based on per employee, or can it be company-wide?
I don't think per employee is a good thing. I think either company or just, I would just say teams, just because that is their focus right now, is teamwork and teams. But I like Jennifer's idea of it going to the managers and them deciding who's been working the hardest.
It's almost like, hey, the company's going to approve you can give up to X% of the bonus based on your employees' performance. You can decide. I know that my husband has to do that. They get approved up to 3% for a raise is what they're pre-approved for. Anything higher than that, they have to have upper management approve if he's giving his employees that. But he has discretion within that 3%.
Yeah, I think, like Jennifer said, I think it still is individual based, because there's going to be those people who absolutely love their job, and it's their career, it's their whole life, and they're going to put 110% in it. And then there's those other people who it's only a job. They don't care. They don't care about the company. They don't care. It's just they come in, clock out. So I think when it comes to teams, it's hard, because someone else is going to have to do the extra work for that person, so if it's individual and if the managers are watching, then they can individualize who's putting forth the effort and who's not.
Yeah.
When I listen to this, there's so many other things when we talk about compensation that like aren't monetary value that you get from a job. You know what I mean? Like I feel like at my husband's work, if you get a shout out at a meeting or something like that, it's a lot bigger of a deal than it might be in other places, and it means more, and they'll do things like give them gift cards or something, and it's not so much that the gift card is like an extraordinary amount of money, but it's the fact that they were acknowledged, Yeah. And so I wonder if the compensation really has to be about money as much as like value.
Well, it's that recognition. It's so
acknowledgement
to the human culture or the human ego is that recognition that what you're doing is justified and valid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it pumps you up, and so when you get that recognition, especially from your boss, you're like, yeah, I'm doing a good job. That's right, and it's gonna pump you up, and then it's gonna motivate you even more to keep doing a good job.
Of course, that depends on the person. Maybe some people don't want that acknowledgement because then they feel that everybody's looking at them. And so again, that does have to be individual, but again, it doesn't have to be money. Just someone to notice what you're doing, and maybe you want it to be public, maybe you don't. But when you feel like somebody's noticed what you've done, that definitely does feel good.
I agree. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add to this portion of our conversation this morning?
No.
Everyone's good with what's been said and discussed, and
yeah, I think it just this week just makes it show that we need to make sure that we don't fall trapped to the myths that we've grown up hearing or learning or thinking, and we look at other ways to acknowledge people and recognize their efforts. And it really made me think about it in terms of my family, to do more, because I'm just like, you did your chores, whoop-de-doo, that's what you were supposed to do, duh.
Part of the family. Yep.
But they need more than that, because then they feel like they're being slaves, or whatever. So it's important in a lot of aspects, but we've got to make sure we structure it the right way.
I agree. Heather, like you, it made me think of my family, How do you get your kids motivated during the summer to do, like I said, we're moving, and I'm like, I need all these boxes packed, and we're having to hit these certain dates, and how do you motivate your kids to participate in something that really is a whole company or family unit? Like, we made the decision together. Like, this is what we're working towards, but how do you motivate them without tying it to incentive pay?
Well, bonus ice cream.
I know, right? We have this new saying around the house because my kids are like, Mom, how come sometimes you can do something and it doesn't make you mad, and then we do it another time and it totally throws you off? And I go, well, I'm kind of like a Jenga set where I'm all stacked nice and neat, and then you start pulling my pieces, and it could be the same piece, and you could put it, and one day that couldn't bug me, but the next time you pull that same piece, it could send me over the edge. And we call it now Jenga, where we tease about it at the house, and it's so true that, just the stacking on of little things can set you off in different ways so fast.
I love that analogy. Good job.
So with my kids, to do a specific chore or something like that, just an idea, like I'll say, okay, let's set the timer for 15 minutes, but I'm up there with them so I can make sure that 15 minutes is productive.
Yeah.
And then after that, then they can have 15 minutes on the screen. And then after that 15 minutes, we'll go back. And it's kind of annoying to be having to set the timer all the time, but I've got those kids, those ages where that has to happen, or else that
it helps.
Turns to an hour. But then I can say, okay, great, now it's time for more. And then if you want, you can do more. So that's just an idea for you. Can't do it all the time, but there you go.
Well, and Heather, I have to tell you, I did like your comment last week about how you're having to set that role model for your 15-year-old son about your phone and driving. I told my oldest, who's only 12, I'm like, you're responsible for my phone when I'm in the car. You're holding on to it. You're looking for the text because it's that important. And I appreciate your example on that because it really just sunk in last week when we talked about it, how important it is to set that example now with my kids, even though we're years away from the driver's license. So thank you.
You're welcome. Not a problem. My pleasure.
So let's just wrap up. Let's just do our final feedback and wrap up. And then if there's any other questions, we can proceed if we want to jump offline. They're the normal questions. If you'd like, I can repeat them all for you. Otherwise, we can just start with Erin and go from there.
So first off, thanks so much, guys, for being such a great group. When we were doing this role play, I really learned that we work really well together, and it's really hard to pretend that we don't. And thank you so much for being patient with me the last couple of weeks while I've been dealing with medical issues. One thing that I learned was just how touchy compensation is, and how talking about it as a whole is rough. But it's good to see everyone's viewpoint and kind of put that together. I also learned that Jennifer is really, really good at role plays, and she's kind of old, but she's so good at it. And you did a great job, Lisa, of leading the group and keeping us together. I'm sure it was kind of hard to have to be a leader over a group that's hard to deal with. So, good job.
Let's jump next. Thank you by that. Let's jump next to Heather, if we could, please.
Well, I think too, as we were role playing, none of us were willing to compromise, and that's so different than how we are usually as a group, where we try to listen to each other's views and not just do what's best for us, but best for the group as a whole. And so that was definitely, I could definitely feel the contention this time rather than just a difference of opinion. So that was something we'll have to also, that'll be that way in the real world, because maybe we can compromise easier just because it's hypothetical and it's not really us in our lives. So that I think is part of what I learned this time. And again, just that we need to make sure we are aware of those myths and not fall into the trap of trying to incentivize people that way. But work on that culture so that motivation comes from within, that job satisfaction is that satisfaction of the job well done and looking for performance and doing things the best that they can be, rather than just trying to reward people for making it better. Lisa, you did good. I kind of liked how you made sure you understood what we said each time. I don't think that's always necessary in a discussion, but in this one today it was, because we had to keep pushing our own character's point of view. And then, so I think for this setting, that was a good thing to do. I also, again, as part of everybody's participation, everybody got into their role really well. Again, that matter of not being very flexible with, I think I still flexed too much. I'm glad we had a Sid and a Sydney. I think Sid stayed truer to their role than I did. But yeah, 10 and 10, we did great. So thank you, everyone.
Jen, would you mind jumping on next, please?
Sure. I think with the role play, there's that artificiality that makes it hard, because if the chemical company was really trying to develop a culture of teamwork, then we would have had more discussion back and forth. And when we were given the case, we had our little section, and that was it. And I think that they really would have listened to each other's opinions and tried to work together more like what we usually do. And so I think that was really, really hard, because without listening to one another, without taking into a fact that their perspective is important, no one's going to solve a problem. And so there really was no way for us to solve the problem here. So I thought that was hard. And I could hear that you were getting frustrated that we weren't making any progress, and I think in a real situation it would be just like that. So I think you did a great job. I appreciate that everyone tries so hard, and just so you know, I hate the role plays part of these cases. Even though it gives us the different perspective, it's really hard to be patient. Like, I was having a really hard time being patient with my character, and it was frustrating. And I was glad to see that other people were feeling that way too. Like when Sharon said, "Okay, I have to stay in my character. Give me a minute to do this," and I appreciated the humanness of that.
Yeah. Perfect. Kelly?
Yes.
Do you need the questions, or do you got them? Do you have them memorized by now?
I have them, honey. Thanks.
Perfect.
Okay, I give everybody a 10. I give you a 10. Kind of listening to what everybody's saying, it's amazing how we as a group, not in our characters, but we have a common denominator, and we have that culture of Jesus Christ and how we're all centered, and I think that's why we get along so fabulous. You know, we respect each other, we respect each other's opinions, and being in a business atmosphere, there isn't that common denominator. You know, it's all about me, or it's a dog-eat-dog world, you know, and what's in it for me, you know, and so it's gonna have that conflict, and you know, and there's not gonna be as much resolution as with us. I feel like there will always be some kind of resolution because of Christ. So I really appreciate it. Yeah, I agree with Jen. It's really hard to stay in a character too, and I don't care for them as much either. I like to hear, I like to value and hear everybody's personal opinions more. But yeah, I thought everybody did fabulous, and it was awesome as always.
Thanks, Kelly. Nick?
Yeah, so I think I'd give us a 10 across the board. I think we work really well together. I think it's kind of fun doing the role playing, because I had, like this week, I had to play a role that I really did not agree with at all. But it was kind of interesting to have to stick to this flawed plan and try to come up with a reason why it's okay. And it kind of helped me see the way that it really was, I guess. Like it was easier for me to see like the obvious flaws in the plan when I had to defend the plan as it sat. And so I appreciated the role play this time. I liked how afterwards we got to kind of give our own like 2 cents, because I feel like it's a little more useful after we see how the discussion doesn't work to be able to discuss as ourselves and come to a conclusion so quickly. That was one of the things I really learned this week was, you know, when we can all bend and work with each other, the solution is not only better, but it comes a lot faster.
Great. Yes, I agree. Sharon?
I thought things went really well. I'd say a 10 as well. You did a great job leading, and it was really difficult for me to play a character that I disagreed with, so that was interesting. And I really do see where if you can't see the other people's perspective and be flexible and kind of you know, work with each other, it would be really difficult to come up with a pay structure or whatever the problem you're working on. So I think that being able to work as a team and communicate and listen and share ideas is so important. And I also learned how critical the role is of the people who are coming up with your pay plans. I mean, I had no idea it was so complex, and gave me a better appreciation for that. Anyway.
Well, can I ask the group something? You know, if we were to have to do this in the corporate world in the future, do you think it would be beneficial to assign everybody, like once you know kind of what everybody thinks, to assign everybody a role of someone else to defend in order to try to help them see it from that point of view? I mean, would that be something to try to do?
I don't think so, just because I think that tempers tend to flare when everyone's being so unyielding, and I think it might kind of create an environment where it's like, you know, in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, I'm playing this character, but I'm really kind of upset, you know, that I'm being reacted to this way, or that I said something that other people are like really aren't in line with, and I just think that that might be a little bit too edgy for a lot of discussions in the real workplace.
I think there's too many egos involved, unfortunately. I get the point because I think we've all seen the benefit of looking from a different perspective, and I think that that's a valid point, but I think it'd be hard to be like, hey, we want you to play the role as if you didn't believe it. I think there might be other ways to convince people to view other opinions, but I just think egos are so fragile that it could be harmful to the company.
And I think, I mean, as missionaries, right, they have them do role plays all the time, and if it's not super high stakes that you're doing it in, it's beneficial for, like, you to kind of see how someone else is thinking. But if it's something that you're really passionate about, it becomes really hard. So if you do it as, like, an exercise for something else, it still has kind of that beneficial of people having to think outside of the box, but it's not so, like, there's not so much passion behind it where people are just going to get really irritated.
Yeah. I hope, and I think the point of this exercise is for us all to think of that in the future, is when we get into either situations where we're HR or we're in the working environment, to take time to step back and remember that other people have different perspectives and they believe as passionately about their opinion as we do about ours. So I think if there's nothing else that we need to talk about this week, I don't think we're starting on our doohickeys quite yet. We'll get that same, I can set out that same structure of our paper that we have sent in the past to just start thinking about it, because we have a couple weeks still till it's due. I think our next week's discussion will be a bigger one on our doohickeys than this week. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add before we end our meeting today?
I was going to ask, whose turn is it to lead the doohickey?
We get to decide. So if anyone wants to volunteer, that's great. And the leader of the doohickey sets up the structure, the solution, the problems, and then we all come up with our solutions. And they're the ones that just kind of wrap up the paper. We don't have to have a volunteer today if you'd like to think about it, and we can do it next week. I don't have a problem with that. I don't know how the rest of you feel.
I would ask that everybody kind of look at their schedules to see what's going on in your life over the next few weeks, because that we may just have somebody who's like, there's nothing going on, it'll be easy for me, whereas other people might be, I'm moving, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I know everyone has everything going on. Our house has to hit the market the 1st of July.
Yeah, but we can all, I think, look at that and say, you know, that's an extra stress that having the doohickeys would just, you know, really add a lot to. So I think we can all see that. So just, if we could all just look at our own lives and our schedules and kind of say, yeah, maybe we don't want to, but for the benefit of the group, I can, because I know that it would be less hard on me than on someone else. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think we can cover for each other. So.
Yeah, I think we've done a great job, and I really do appreciate everyone's willingness to just do just that, Heather and Jennifer, like you said, just step up and help each other and get through. And so I think that's a wise idea, to just take a look, and we can decide next week and go from there.
Yeah, I thought it was so funny. Last week I was putting in my stuff, and all of a sudden I see this little cursor moving, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? And it was Nick.
Right?
Nick and I were on there together, like totally, you know, I thought it was awesome because he helped like move some of my stuff, and then I was helping correct some other stuff, and it was just awesome, like our teamwork, you know, it was awesome.
Yeah, it was cool to see the paper just like take shape.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, if no one has anything else to add, then we'll go ahead and close out this meeting for this week and plan to meet next Wednesday. I think we rotate back up to the top because Jen and I switched places. And I believe that Sharon, you'll be our leader next week. Is that correct?
Yep.
Perfect.
That sounds good. I have a question on that. Did he say that we only do the group leader assignment thing once?
I think it's twice.
It is twice.
Okay. No
And
worries.
other groups don't have 7 people, I don't think, like we do. I mean, if you notice on the evaluation quiz, there's only like room for 5, and I'm like, that's not enough for us.
I know. I always double up on some of them just to. I don't know. That's what I do. I just put 2 people's name.
Yeah. Well, and you look at, if you participate or watch, when we watch those live events, there's some groups that have 2 people. That's it.
That would be horrible.
I know. I can't imagine. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah.